the cult hockey podcast by the faithful and for the faithful. I'm David Staples of the Edmonton Journal, and I'm here today with Bruce McCurdy. Hey, Bruce.
Hey, David. How you doing tonight?
Fantastic. How are you doing?
All right. Just had a big nap and had a big family event this afternoon. Came home, crashed out for a while, and I'm just kind of getting my head back into the things tonight, but all's good.
I love my naps as well. Such a great way to rejuvenate.
Mm-hmm.
What was the event?
We had family visiting from Wales. That was at my niece's and her husband's house in southwest Edmonton, and it was we've had lots of family coming and going this last while, so it's been a kind of interesting time. But so we sat out in the beautiful day it was today, just gorgeous. I walked this morning, had this time this afternoon, had a little sleep, all good to go. Hockey.
Indeed. I'm just thinking of Wales. Where is Inversnaid in Wales? There's this great poem called Inversnaid, and when I first read it,
it sounds Scottish.
It's Scottish.
Inverness, it's a famous Scottish place that I've actually been to.
When I first read it, it seemed like it was in another language. It was so strange.
Could be Scottish or Welsh then.
But it was Scottish, and I gradually deciphered it. Yeah. All right, Bruce, the captain's skate is going on. We're going to talk about that. Mm-hmm. We're going to talk about the elephant in the room for the Oilers season. I'm going to be writing a post on that tonight. Talk about Vinny Desharnais in a really interesting revealing interview that he gave to a Montreal podcaster. We'll talk about Dylan Holloway. We'll talk about some of the battles that are shaping up. The battle for essentially the last defensive job and fourth line center job. And then we'll look quickly at what's next for the Oilers. Let's start with the captain's skate. There's been a lot of positivism coming out of the captain's skate, Bruce, because apparently all the players are there. Everybody showed up. Raphael Lavoie was missing, I understand, but he was at an NHLPA event, right, which I'm sure the other players would be cool with. I guess, is he there 100%. Now? So all of them are there, and they're getting like a 2-week jump. I don't know if every captain's skate is this well attended across the NHL. Do you know, I heard an interesting thing, Bruce, about the NBA. This is just a quick non sequitur. Andrew Bogut, who was an NBA center for 10 years, was being interviewed. He said it's typical now for superstars on NBA teams not to even go to team meals with the team. Like, the league is that kind of segmented and fractured. You know, and some NBA players are making $30-40 million a year now a season, $50 million a year. Mm-hmm. And I just found that fascinating. And I contrast that with the Oilers and with the captain's skate and with the closeness, the immense closeness that we're starting to see with these Edmonton Oilers. And you got to love it. I mean, I do. What's your take on it?
Yeah, I love it as well. I think that's probably the single most positive article I've written in quite some time about the Oilers as a team. I mean, I was looking for reasons for optimism, but there was plenty of reasons to find. It was a pretty easy post to write but driving it was the fact that the captain had called for, captain skates to start 2 weeks before training camp, and sounds like he encouraged his teammates to be there, and they are all there without any exception. I think all 22 players who played games with the Oilers last year, who's still around on this, under contract, were all there without exception. They also had a couple of, the new guys that Brandon Sutter and Sam Gagner on PTOs. They're there. They had a couple of their top, what we designated as their top two prospects, Xavier Bourgault and also Raphael Lavoie, both there. And then Lavoie had to skip out on day 2 to go to this thing in Washington for NHL rookies, which is some kind of a program for, rookies. I think are likely to make the NHL. It's just sort of an orientation camp for event of some kind. I don't know how long he was there. Sorry, my cat's scratching her ear. She'll stop soon. And so those guys were there. Just basically everybody who's potentially to start the season with the team is already there and skating, and the togetherness aspect is what gets to me. I mean, they got I believe it's 7 new dads on this team. I mean, Darnell Nurse, he had to skip the second day of this captain skate because his partner was having a baby that day. Like he skated the first day with her on the verge, and then I guess he missed a day or maybe 2. I'm not fully up to speed with who's been there every single day, but just the immediate full attention of the team and the clear intention and focus of the team that this is the year we're going for it, and we're just going to do everything we can to get ready for the season, and just the togetherness of the team in general. This is kind of Ken Holland's great experiment of actually trying to make a team of guys that like one another. I think it's been fairly clear in some of the stuff that Holland has done that bringing in guys like Zach Hyman and Jack Campbell, for that matter,
Connor Brown.
Connor Brown, that are just really positivists, and they all happen to be have a background in Ontario. Campbell's an American, but he played for Toronto. The other guys are from Ontario, and there's just a ton of guys on this team from Ontario, and they seem to be buddies. Like I know when Zach Hyman had his tournament, there was this one tournament, the one photograph they posted these dudes up on the balcony at the tournament, and had Darnell Nurse, Warren Fogle, Ryan McLeod, Evan Bouchard, Connor McDavid, and Zach Hyman. They're all from Greater Toronto. Like they were all sort of, let's go home and play in Zach's tourney, And some Oil fans might hate that. I don't. I understand that Jeff Jackson, the new CEO, has prioritized scouting and seeing the OHL as it is, as the best provider of talent from any one league anywhere, and he's prioritized that. But it's more than that. It's that these guys get along. They're buds, and it's not like a free ticket, like Devon Shore. He didn't get a job back this year, and he's moved on somewhere else. He's part of that core group, but now they've got Connor Brown in there. Leon is an honorary Canadian. It seems like wherever he goes, he just fits right in. And, they've got this, I guess it's a sense of purpose, and I'm delighted to see that they've carried it to this point where, let's just get her going, and this is what we're going to do. Now, the question is, what are they going to do, which I suspect will be part of what your column is about. Mine was more about the fact that they're here and some of the things that we have to be positive about, including, this great offensive team that led the league by over 30 goals last year, or it was 25 goals last year, and was pulling away in the second half of the season, had the great scores that the Oilers got. The fact that, basically they've got their team built right now, and we're all talking about, well, who's going to be the 12th forward, because we know who the other 11 and the 70 and the 2 goalies are going to be, and we got room for one more player under the cap. And that's really the biggest outstanding question right now. It's not like, well, we don't have a number 1 D man, or we don't have gaping holes here and there in the lineup. I mean, there's certainly performance questions about 1 or 2 of the guys that they do have, the aforementioned Jack Campbell being high on that list. But we know who the guys are. They're all here, and they apparently are here with one objective in mind, to finish the job that they think they left unfinished last year.
It is a facet of the modern NHL with the way the salary cap is in contracts, that most teams, there's questions around who is the number 1 D-man on teams, but in terms of who's making the team, most of those decisions have been made for most of the teams right now. There's for most teams, it's just it's the same question: who's going to be the bottom 2 or 3 players on the roster? Because everyone else has a job guaranteed, and that's the fact of the matter. And this is the modern NHL. It's good they like each other because they're all signed up long.
Yeah.
I really like the idea of Bourgault and Lavoie being there. I just think that is that ever valuable for a young player like them, instead of just going to rookie camp and then being on the team for a couple exhibition games and moving on. They're really, Lavoie could make the team, of course, but they're going to benefit from getting to know the older players and playing with them and becoming familiar with that. And 2 weeks is a long time in a young player's life. You can learn a lot in 2 weeks. And that's just very encouraging news. I also heard an interview with Matthias Ekholm. Speaking of honorary Canadians, does he ever sound like a Canadian? He has a complete North American accent, and he's moved here, and his kids are going to school. He's just fit right in. Like, man, he's if he keeps playing like he did last year, Bruce, he's going to be a big fan favorite because he's really become an Edmonton.
I think he's cemented as fan favorite already. That Viking beard for one thing, but the way he's embraced his family's embraced Edmonton, that's going to win him nothing but fans in these parts. He stayed here for the summer, none of this going back to Sweden stuff. He said, let's get used to my new home, and that's here. And he professed to really love it here last year. And there's not one thing that I saw from the guy that suggested that he didn't, or that his teammates weren't big fans of his. And now he and his wife had a baby of their own in this time, and Leon. I mean, if there's a better hockey name out there than Leon Ekholm, I want to hear it.
Hey, I saw a video that purported to be of Oscar Klefbom playing pickleball. We were talking about him last week. I don't really it's the internet, so who knows? You never trust a video on the internet, but that's what the video said it was. I couldn't really tell who it was in the video, but if Klefbom's well enough to play pickleball, then that's good. I'm glad to see that. Bruce, I don't
think you need both your shoulders to play pickleball, and I don't think the other guy is trying to run you through the wall either, right? I mean, it's a more or less, I believe, non-contact sport. It's not even racquetball. That can get pretty tough.
Yeah.
So, I mean, he's a young, wannabe athletic guy. I don't hold that against him, and I don't think there's anything nefarious about it.
I'm not holding it against him.
I think you'll find some people saying, "What the hell is he doing?"
What the hell with some people? Action. Bruce, it's a time of positivity right now. There's a lot of positive talks. I've heard interviews with McDavid, Draisaitl, Woodcroft, Hyman on Oilers now. And reading them in other places, and everyone's really positive. And one thing struck me as missing from those interviews, and maybe just because this is my personal obsession, something I've been started to think and write about a lot over the summer, but I think a lot of Oiler fans are thinking about this, and none of them really addressed what I think is the elephant in the room with this Oilers team. There's lots to like about this team. But Bruce, there's something really not to like about this team. Something that was in the playoffs against Vegas was a shambles, was a mess. And that's the team's defensive play. They were in the regular season, they were 17th overall. They were a mediocre, average NHL team on defense for the season, giving up 3.1 goals per game. Against Vegas in the playoffs, they gave up 3.7 goals per game. And you can say, oh yeah, well, Vegas is the cup winner. That's a great team. Vegas wasn't a great attacking team, I don't think. They were good. They could put the puck in the net. But this wasn't the 1985 Edmonton Oilers.
No.
This was a decent attacking team by playoff standards, and the Oilers gave up 3.7 goals per game. It was a mess. It was a shambles. And if this team doesn't get on top of this, Bruce, they're not going to win the Stanley Cup. And now maybe it's no big deal that they weren't talking about it. And Woodcroft said to Bob Stauffer that he wasn't one to give away any secrets or talk about stuff, right? So maybe, and he also talked about, they want to build, they don't want to throw out their successful stuff. Well, I'm hoping he's talking about their power play and their attacking. because that really was successful. But defensively, Bruce, this team has got huge problems, and I think it's important not to overlook it, and early in the season to really write about it, think about it, and certainly for the team to focus on it. And I'd actually like to hear more talk about it. I think they can talk about that more openly as a goal. I think the goal for the team should be reducing their goals against this year by 50 goals in the regular season, which would make them one of the best defensive teams in the league. I think they can and should be one of the best defensive teams in the league. There's nothing stopping this team at even strength from being a really strong defensive team. There has to be a higher level of commitment and intensity from each player on defense. There has to be better goaltending, and there has to be, I think, a much better defensive system. And maybe that's what Woodcroft doesn't want to talk about, the fact that that's going to be reworked significantly, which is fine. I mean, other teams are going to figure that out after one game. You can watch the video and you know what they're doing. It's not going to be a secret. So if he feels that, I mean, that's his business. I'm not going to say anything. Like, he's the coach. But other teams will quickly know if they've changed their defensive system. They need to. Their defensive system was a fiasco, and it was part of the mess, and that is on Jay Woodcroft. He's got to fix it. It's on Dave Manson. He's got to fix it. The goaltending, much has been talked about that. I think it's overrated, honestly, how bad the goaltending was. I think it was mainly a problem of defensive structure and players not focused on their assignments within the system that existed. So, maybe they think they can stick with the same system and get better results by having players play with greater intensity and focus. I actually don't think that's the right idea, but we will soon see. And for me, in the first part of the season, that's what I'm going to be looking at closely and writing. So,
yeah, no, clearly it's the one area where there's most room for improvement. So why not focus on that as a place to improve? The Oilers were 17th last year in goals against. Vegas was 14th in goals for with 267 goals. So nothing real special. 14th out of 32. And they were, long way behind Edmonton and their 325. Oilers had almost 60 more goals. But I don't think that it's even necessarily fair to equate the Vegas team from the regular season to the one that we saw in the playoffs when all the pieces came together and Mark Stone returned from the dead. They had added a couple of players in his absence. They had basically the full team and they were going. Yeah, Barbashev was the big addition.
Two really good wingers. Yeah, although Barbashev was there, the last part of the year, but not the whole
after
year.
The deadline. Right. Yeah,
correct.
Because Stone was on the list anyway. Clearly the team that they had in the playoffs was better than the one they had in the regular season. I'm not sure you could say that about Edmonton, and I'm not sure you could say it was better than the one that finished the regular season 18-2-1. And they just Vegas got to him, and you talk about the goals against. Well, they gave up 4 goals in all 4 games they lost. And that's really the magic number right there. If you can keep that goals against below 4 with this team, you're going to win a lot of games in any given game. And overall, you want to get your goals against average below 3. And if you can do that, you're probably cooking with gas with the offense these guys have got. But I mean, from where I sit, I'd love to see them say, not necessarily say, but I would love to see a focus on, well, if we get 20 fewer points, but we get 20 more pluses at the end of the season, that's actually an improvement, even though our numbers will be down a little bit offensively. Let's work on the two-way game and try and, pick up on that goal differential front. Right? Every goal we don't give up. 20
fewer scoring points, are you talking about?
Yeah, 20. Yeah, say McDavid and Draisaitl each get 20 fewer points, but they're both, plus 30 instead of plus 10 or whatever it was last year. That's that to me. That would be a positive step.
Yeah, Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl should be looking at being plus 40, this season at even strength. They should, and so should Darnell Nurse, and so should Matthias Ekholm, and Zach Hyman. That, and Evander Kane and Ryan Nugent-Hopkins. They've all got to be the focus. And it's not just them. Again, it's the coaches. They have to figure out a system where this particular group of players can thrive on defense. and these two goalies can thrive behind the defense that you've created. So it's the whole group of them, and I hope to see that happen.
Well, the
Bruce,
coaches we haven't heard much from yet because these are the captain skates. Coaches aren't
yeah,
there. Right.
Woodcroft was interviewed at
Just
length.
happened that the Oilers just incidentally rented out Rogers Place for 2 weeks to this guy, this guy off the street, David O'Connor, and his friend Fa Afo rented the building for 2 weeks. And, it's not an official event at all. I mean, I'm sure the Oilers don't even know what's going on. The team doesn't even know what's going on down there. But seriously, they've got we'll start hearing from Jay Woodcroft basically the day training camp opens. That focus will go there, and I will be very interested to hear what he states as potential objectives or targets for team performance and where they need to take this to carry it to the next step.
I don't expect Woodcroft to talk about his specific defensive strategies,
right.
but
I would like
to see him say, we have a goal of this many goals we want to cut. And we're not going to talk about the process of getting there. It's all about the process of doing that, both in the practices and the games. That's their whole focus. But having a goal as well would be, I think, a useful way to measure him this year as a coach. And I mean, in the end, all that matters is whether they win in the playoffs or not. But Bruce, let's move on to the next topic. Let's move on. Oh, the Vinny Desharnais podcast. So Desharnais, I didn't really know what kind of person he was at all. I had very little sense of him as, I don't listen to the interviews of the players after the games very much. I don't find them that interesting. So sorry about that. But man, was Vinny, maybe I've been missing out, Bruce, maybe all along, but did he ever open up in this interview to it's called the Sick Podcast by Tony Marinaro, and you should go listen to the podcast. Just Google that.
I tend to myself, yeah. Thanks.
And he talked about his essentially. Marinaro asked him, because Vinny had such a long road to the pros. He wasn't playing his first NHL game till he was 26. He played 4 years in college. He played 2 years in or a year in the ECHL, 2.5 years in Bakersfield, and then he finally made it to the NHL. And he said, did you ever think about quitting? And out from Desharnais' mouth came this incredible story about personal development and about fighting through using cognitive therapy and positive thinking techniques, which are fairly well known, which, there's numerous books about these things, to fight through his despair and desperation. He suffered a concussion in his first year in the ECHL. And he talked in this interview about, he was so down, he just didn't want to, at times he didn't want to be alive anymore. He was so down. And he was anxious. He didn't think he was the 16th man on the 16th man roster. He didn't see a future in professional hockey. Here's a quote from Vinny. Quote, I developed anxiety, started having anxiety attacks, started being depressed, led to the depression. I wanted to quit hockey, wanted to quit on life pretty much. I didn't want to be here anymore, unquote. So we see a young person who came out of college with high hopes, and it all came crashing down, culminating in a pretty tough injury. Concussion is just can be a devastating injury. And what got him out of that was reading some books, listening to podcasts on personal development, reading books on personal development, on cognitive therapy, starting to have a daily journal where he would write affirmations, things that he wanted to believe about himself, the person he wanted to be. And the idea of affirmations, if you write them, you will become that person. You start to adopt that idea in your head. And it worked. All of this hard work, and it was the key thing. For him, it wasn't like he was working hard off and on the ice. He was doing a lot right there. But the thing for him that made a difference was his mental attitude.
Yes.
And it was dramatic. I mean, he worked from the ECHL to become one of the best defensemen in the AHL, to become out of nowhere, seemingly, a defenseman who, before the playoffs at least, it really captured the hearts of Oilers fans with his great physical play and his play in the penalty kill. He had his struggles in the playoffs, and so I'll just he wrote about taking I think he was talking about, I think it was game 4 or 5 where he took that tripping penalty, Bruce, against Los Angeles.
Yep.
That led to a power play goal against. And here's what he had to say about that. Quote, "I was so bad. I left the ice so in my head, anxious. I'm like, I can't believe I almost cost the game, almost cost the series. And then to stop all that, the brain, the little voice inside the brain that tells you you're so bad and you're this or that, just the journal. I've learned to use my tools and not get stuck in, the cycle of you are bad. I'm here for a reason. I know I'm here. I'm just going to execute. I just got to believe in myself." So he has these affirmations that he wrote, and they're kind of funny in a way. Have you seen Ted Lasso? One of the players on Ted Lasso, of this great series about a soccer coach, they all start. He writes affirmations to himself.
Wow.
Just reminded me of that a little bit. Anyway, he writes one of them. He writes every single day in his diary. Right? He writes, "I'm self-confident and I embrace uncertainty." And he does this, so
Yes.
he's always so worried about being sent down. And now he's just kind of, whatever happens, it happens. He used to have an affirmation, "I will play in the NHL." And that's now changed to, "I am an NHL player and I will win the Stanley Cup." And I love
That's
that.
a nice objective to have.
I love that he's telling himself that, and he's seeing that, he's visualizing that, and he's gonna make that happen. And finally, it ends off with a great story about Connor McDavid. So again, this is again in the LA series, one of the early games. I think I know the play where Desharnais caused the goal against, essentially. I think it was one of those plays where he was wandering out towards the blue line, actually trying to cover someone in the Oilers' defensive system that I don't like. Anyway, he was responsible for a goal against, and McDavid was on the ice, and he got a -1 on the play, a -1 on his stat sheet. McDavid did for his goals plus minus. So after the game, Desharnais is feeling bad about this, and he goes up to McDavid and he says, "Hey man, like, sorry, that was a bad pass on me. -1 is on me. I'm sorry, dude." And then he says, and then he says, and Connor turns around. He looked at me and he was like, "Dude, I don't care about stats. I just want to fucking win."
I didn't mind hearing that either. He's got pretty dandy stats, but his focus is in the right place if that's his objective, and it's a good message to be sharing with his teammates, frankly. And it sounded like it let Vinny himself refocus a little bit on what the priorities were, and he came out of that with a little more respect and admiration for McDavid, who's a year older than Vinny, if that, but he's played a lot more NHL hockey. But yeah, he's that story cheered me up immensely. I have to say, I laughed, and at the same time thinking, yeah, that's exactly what I want to hear him having said. So, speaking of McDavid, as for Desharnais himself, I think everything I heard in this interview was consistent with what we saw last year. He was interviewed quite a bit. He's very open, engaging fellow, and he says what's on his mind. I mean, he went on Hockey Night in Canada and said, to be successful, he needs to be a prick on the ice. Well, that's not a new strategy necessarily, but it's not often you hear someone talk about it on After Hours in quite such blunt terms. And he easy fellow to like. And you see that I do believe that he's been through a lot. And one of the things that caught me about all the statements that he said, which is maybe just sort of fundamental to this kind of cognitive therapy, as you say, is that it helps him put behind a poor performance. He says, I turn the page and it's over. Tomorrow I'm going to wake up and it's a new day, it's a new page, it's a blank page. And he starts with his affirmations again every day. And it sounds, I guess, kind of simple, but clearly it's done some good because this guy's come an awful long way from being a concussed ECHLer to being a everyday NHLer in pursuit of the Stanley Cup. You know, he beat some pretty long odds to get to where he's got, and he beat him with positive attitude and his approach to things, and I'm guessing with his ability to put things behind him, that not, you know, and rather than let him weigh on him, which is unfortunately one of the aspects of depression, is that, you know, people get dragged down on things that have happened and can't seem to put him behind him. Well, it sounds like he's found a way to deal with that, and he did have a few tough lessons in the playoffs. He struggled at times in the LA series, and he had a miserable game one against Vegas. And to his credit, he bounced back after that. And I thought in the last 5 games of the Vegas series, he was fine. But it was a learning experience for a lot of Oilers, and especially the guys that were new to the NHL playoffs. I mean, how could it not be? So, I found this story a very good read for starters, and it just made me even more of a fan of this player that I've, you know, he's an easy guy to like, Big Vinny.
He is, and it's interesting. Like, we're on social media now, and you people often write about their mental struggles and their anxiety and their depression, and I just would want to recommend, if this is an issue that you haven't, and it's an issue for most people, right? Everyone gets the blues and is anxious, and then some people have it worse than most. Yeah. Listen to his interview and think about the process he went through, and you know, he references one book, I think it's by Sir something Hargraves. I can't remember the name of the book off. It's in the story that I wrote, and it's in his interview. Some great advice there is my only point. Right. And I think this is a process, this kind of cognitive therapy, positive thinking, journaling, that many people engage in and have tremendous results. And there's some real hope there, I think, for people in messages like this. So, you know, I would recommend digging into that interview. Bruce, let's segue into Desharnais is locked in a kind of an interesting battle. And I don't think it's just with Philip Broberg. I think it's with Brett Kulak and Cody Ceci. And Kulak and Ceci, they both have 2 years left, do they, on their deals?
Kulak's got 3 more years.
Kulak has 3 and Ceci has 2.
Ceci has 2. They both had 4-year deals, but they signed them one off season apart.
And Kulak and Ceci are both a couple years older than Desharnais, and Broberg, of course, is just 22, I think. Maybe just turned 22. So there's been a lot of talk, and Woodcroft talked about this too, about giving Philip Broberg more of a chance, seeing what he can do. I think it's absolutely essential. You've developed this player. He's obviously got tremendous size, skating skills. He looks like he could be a top 4 defenseman to me, kind of a defensive specialist who can really handle the puck safely and shut down the best attackers on the other team, because he's such a fantastic skater and he's got such a big frame. So they do have to figure out, but how's that going to happen? And most of us assume it's going to come at the expense of Vinny Desharnais. The more I think about that, I'm not so sure about that. There are the Kulak and Ceci have both played very strong hockey for the Edmonton Oilers, and they also had bouts of pretty weak play. Kulak, first half of last season, was really marginal, and then became strong as the season went on and in the playoffs. He was really performed well in the playoffs. Ceci had a down year, pretty much, after having a really good year the year before. But the Oilers have cap issues. The next couple of years, Broberg and Desharnais are likely to be cheaper players than Kulak and Ceci. And I think when you're thinking about that and you're thinking about Broberg's potential, if he starts to live up to his play, and you're thinking about what the Oilers need in terms of toughness and size, work on the penalty kill, Desharnais checks a lot of boxes for this team. And if Broberg is capable of playing in the top four, I wouldn't be surprised. It's just got me thinking maybe we'll see a midseason trade with either Kulak or Ceci moved out this year. Wouldn't be surprised at all. It would be a logical
Broberg
move.
Can step up, it would be logical.
If he can step up, I think he can step up, and I think it would be the team. Like there's salary cap reasons that would be a good idea. It would, but I also just think I see a lot in this player. Not everybody agrees with me on that. I'm more bullish than most people.
On Broberg.
On Broberg. How do you see it, Bruce?
Yeah, the seven seem to be set, don't they?
Yeah.
With Niemelainen on the outside looking in, who's roughly speaking a left shot Desharnais. But I think Desharnais shown a little bit more upside on the penalty kill aspect of the game, especially. I think they'll go with the seven. I think we're going to see a lot of games, David, with 11 forwards and 7 D-men. I don't see why that would change. We've had a year and a half of Jay Woodcroft, and he's done that roughly half the time throughout, where he's run with 7 D-men, and those are the 7. Now the question is, how do you deploy them? And the one intriguing idea that you popped out there is put Broberg right in the top 4 and sink or swim with the guy. But you've got then a couple of veterans below him to, if he's struggling on this night or that would be an interesting gambit by the Oilers to try that. You could really win big with it if he makes that next step. The pressure's on the kid, frankly, to make it, because 4 years later and we're, when you're sort of designated as a 6'7" defenseman, you're right on the very cusp of even being on the team. And he did some nice things last year, and as you say, he has that speed, he has the size, the reach, what the scouts and hockey men, the 200 hockey men call length. Like he can just suddenly sort of take one stride and stretch his body out and stretch his stick out, and he's taking away 15 feet of ice with that one move, right? And he's got that kind of, you can see what they like about the guy and why they want to continue to put him in there, but they put a lot of obstacles in his way. And I mean, part of the Ken Holland way is, okay, you think you're going to make the NHL? Well, I'm going to find 3 real pros to stack up in front of you. And in the case of Philip Broberg, those pros all have term on their contract. This is the part that I wonder where is the overall plan when you have Broberg that you've spent your first ever draft pick on, you're bringing up through the ranks, and now that he's here and should be ready to go, you got a guy with 7 years to run on his contract that plays left defense, and 2 other guys with 3 years each on their contract that play left defense, and where does he go? So if he's capable of making the switch to the right side, great. And if he's not, you're going to be struggling to get minutes for him. The one time last year the Oilers that he got minutes was in the third quarter of the season when they were running 7 D-men, but 4 of them shot right. And Broberg was getting more or less every third shift on the third pairing with was Bouchard that he was playing with at that time. And they were kind of crushing it on the goal differentials front. They were both, they were very good players playing down the lineup and cleaning up on the other team a little bit. And so that was his best time. And then they traded Barry, a righty, for Ekholm, a lefty, and it all changed. And all of a sudden, Broberg is not just part of a 7-man unit, but he's number 7. And he had, was kind of getting the extra oddball shifts here and there, but his ice time just really took a big hit in the fourth quarter.
Yeah.
Bringing Ekholm solved some big problems here, but it didn't necessarily help Broberg. So Uh,
Yeah.
what you'd love to see, or what I'd love to see, is let's put Ekholm on the right side. Sorry, let's put Broberg on the right side with Ekholm. Let's see what happens if he plays 20 games. If they play 20 games as a pairing, let's see what that does to Broberg's development. And if he leaps forward with it, great. And if he struggles with that, then maybe you're reevaluating.
Ekholm was asked about playing the right side himself. He did so in Nashville last year,
Oh,
and the
okay.
team got off, to a bad start
Mm-hmm.
with, and he was playing with McDonough, and he was on
Mm-hmm.
the right side, and he said it was different, but it sounds like he's open to it. So it could be Ekholm on the right side and Broberg on the left side to start the year, and I wouldn't. We'll see what happens. Coaches often talk about giving young players a chance early in the year and quickly abandon that. So we've seen that a lot. If Cody Ceci doesn't step up, though, he could be the odd man out very quickly. Or if Kulak struggles. So there is really healthy competition. Let's face it. Last year, the competition wasn't solved by the obvious thing, which is injury. This was a remarkably healthy group of players. Usually one defenseman or two get injured. So that's probably what's going to happen. It's just how it works in the NHL. It's a tough position where you get banged up. And so someone's going to get it'll sort itself out that way, most likely.
There's no telling. I remember that year Ethan Bear started the year as the seventh defenseman, and he wound up playing every single game of the entire year. It was the lockout year, so it was 71 games. But he played the first game because the young Swede that they brought over had he was actually ahead of him.
Is it
Trying to
Person?
remember what that person, yeah. And he was but he missed the first game due to injury. So Bear started the season, and Adam Larson broke his ankle in the first period of the first game, blocking a shot. And then he finished the game, but by game two, he was out for 6 weeks or whatever, and Bear was in there, and Bear wound up grabbing the, seizing the day and earning himself a job and becoming pretty useful player in the process. And then other years you have nobody gets hurt, and it
just never know.
Yeah, you just don't know. I mean, the Oilers had other young guys that just couldn't get in the lineup in years that the team was healthy. Jordan Osterley. I mean, the year that the Oilers had him on his last year, he played 2 games the whole year because the whole defense just stayed healthy.
Yeah.
So, and they lost that player and that was just happenstance. Like some of it, you just don't know.
Speaking of injury, one of the players that's being talked about right now a lot is Dylan Holloway, who has had a couple. He just keeps he's getting a few injuries. He had the broken thumb that had surgery that needed to be done twice, really set him back. And last year, other injuries he was out with. So this guy, Rob Brown, calls him Evander Kane light.
Yeah.
He's big, he's fast, he can make plays with the puck. He does look like a winger who could play in the top 6. And, we'll see what happens there. He could also be a center. Like, he was a strong center in college hockey. And maybe that's his best position. And maybe the Oilers could use another center. So I wouldn't be surprised, like if, let's say there's an injury in the top 6, if Holloway would be the first guy who gets a chance to move in there and show what he's got. And I wouldn't be surprised if he did very well. Like he does have a lot of talent. He's really good with the puck, and he's big and he's fast. So wouldn't be surprised at all to see him have some success in a top 6 role. On the other hand, he's quite a useful player. Like, I think he can play down the lineup too, because I see him as an okay defensive player already, and he should get better at that as he gets more familiar with the NHL game. So,
yeah, he's an intriguing player. He's got seems like the full package in terms of the skill set, as you say, young, fast, big, strong on the puck, very strong, aggressive. Challenging for the puck, like his instincts of just playing hard on the puck when the other guys have it. that's a good instinct to have, almost what position you wind up at. His ability to play left wing or center, he does pencil in as a top six player potentially on the wing, or bottom six down the middle. Maybe the fact that he can do so many things, they're going to sort of say, pick one thing, say this is going to be your job for a while. But his rookie season was promising. He had some very promising moments. He had a goodly number of flat out rookie brain cramps. We saw a few of those, and that I think the mental side of the game is where he needs to do the most work. And I'm not saying he's a dummy. I'm just saying he's got to bring up his game into the NHL level and just learn to be consistent in his responses. Don't abandon the passing lane to go for a line change for no apparent reason. You can't be doing that kind of stuff in this league. They will burn you, and he found that out twice last year when he pulled that stunt. Both times the puck wound up in Edmonton's net. And so you just want to see learning from those things and progression in that area. On the other hand, there was a time early in Mark Messier's career where I despaired that he would ever figure out that aspect of the game. He turned out to be pretty good. It's early in this fellow's progression. I'm not saying he's Mark Messier. I am saying that his record says consistently it takes time for him. In the AJHL, he was sort of point of game player in his first year. In the second year, he absolutely crushed it with 88 points in 53 games, including 40 goals. In university hockey, his first year, he was like half a point a game, and even then he did most of his scoring at the end of the year. Second year, he was a point and a half a game. Went from half point to a point and a half a game, and from year one to year two. Then he turned pro, and now he's had his first full campaign in 2/3 of a campaign in Edmonton. Didn't score much, but now this is the second year here, and let's see how his track record says he learns in the first year and performs better in the second. Okay, well, here's show me time in the NHL. It's his second year, so I have high hopes for the player. I'm still not entirely sure where and how he fits in terms of which line mates, what position he winds up ultimately playing, but the raw talent base, if he could stay healthy, David, this was the other thing.
Yeah.
Like, they sent him down to Bakersfield after 51 games, and they wound up in this problem where they could only run 20 guys for a while, and they sent him, and they actually sent Desharnais out at that point. And this was just before the Puljujarvi trade that opened up the cap space. And he went down to Bakersfield. When he got hurt in the very first game he played in the minors and missed a stack of time. And he came back. He got 7 goals in 12 games. Pretty darn good. 10 points in the AHL in 12 games compared to 9 points in 51 games in the NHL. It was clearly found a new level of not just comfort but production in the AHL. Now, the step is to do that, but in the higher league.
Bruce, we'll talk now about the fourth line center job, which Holloway, I think, is in the running for, honestly.
Right, yeah.
But Kurt Levens wrote about this today in his 9 Things column, one of the great Sunday reads in hockey. And Kurt has the battle down to a number of players, Raphael Lavoie, Sam Gagner, Lane Peterson, James Hamblin, and what's this Sutter's name? Brent. Brent's
a dad. Brandon.
Brandon Sutter. Sorry. And the thing that struck me first of all, looking at that list of people, is the way Devon Shore played at the end of last season. Isn't he a better player than any of those guys? And made me wonder why they didn't offer him the minimum contract. Seattle did. I think they did. He's not a PTO, right? He got a contract, didn't he? Anyway, maybe that's it. Maybe they weren't going to give him a contract. Yeah. But I just thought
2-way deal, I think it was.
Now, maybe I don't know Lane Peterson. Maybe Lane Peterson's ready to be the next Devon Shore. Some people, including Kurt, think Kurt wants to see Sam Gagner get that spot and thinks it's a possibility. My sense is that's not a very good group of players to be picking from. Although I don't know Lane Peterson, so I can't really say. Hamblin didn't impress me much as an NHL player. It was his first kick at the can, though. Maybe in a second attempt, he'll be more solid defensively, bit more feisty, giving the team more of what they need from that position. But I didn't see it in the first go around. Gagner's coming off injury. I don't see him as a center. I don't see him as a defensive specialist. I don't get it. Listen, he's loved here in Edmonton, and people are rooting for him, and I'm not rooting against him. I just don't see it. And as for Sutter, again, 2 years off, coming off long COVID, he's more the type of player who theoretically fits the mold of what they need. He's a defensive center, and they could use a defensive center, even if he's not fast. But he's been away from the game a couple of years. He's 34. I mean, how many past their prime defensive centers that we seen come in here and not get the job done in a third or fourth line center capacity? Not even close. And so Devon Shore played really well in the second half of the season. So anyway, I made that point. It's done. It's over and out.
Yeah, I thought they'd PTO Devon Shore, and I still think they would have had he not found this contract somewhere else, but he's gone.
He's gone.
I mean, he's I mean, you should be able to find players of that quality for sure. And I mean, Lane Peterson may very well be that player.
Yes,
he happens to be a right shot center that helps. Boy, has this guy ever moved around a lot. Last July, he was traded from San Jose with Brent Burns in the trade that dumped Brent Burns' salary from San Jose's perspective. And, Burns was clearly the focal point for Carolina, who never even dressed Peterson for a game. In the end of October, they traded him with Ethan Bear to Vancouver for a 5th round pick. And then in January, they put him on waivers, and Columbus picked him up off of waivers. So this is not exactly the track record of a guy who's high demand around the league. He's been included in this deal or that. And he's played with 4 NHL teams, a total of 71 games. And he's played at least 10 games with all 4 teams, which is unusual. It's not usually you have a sort of one game here, whatever. But he's played with Arizona, San Jose, Vancouver, and Columbus. Not exactly murderer's row of top NHL teams. He didn't make any of those teams. So how he's going to now suddenly make the Edmonton Oilers, I would say the track record bets against it, but maybe he's one of these players who's still improving at age 26 and finds a place where he fits. But I mean, they got to give him a look. But I can't say there's anything in here that tells me that, boy, this is the guy that's going to solve that problem. He did score a bit in the minors last year.
4 goals in 71 NHL games. Now, he has been a prolific scorer for four seasons in the minor leagues. Like, he's a guy,
good, yeah.
but he's a point of game guy in the AHL. But he's got to be a defensive player. Like, he's got to. Lane Peterson coming to camp is like, he's got to make up his mind. He's got to do the old Vinny Desharnais, and his thing should read. That's what I should write a little piece on. It should be. I am the most conscientious, nastiest prick of a 4th line center in the NHL. That's what Lane Peterson's affirmation should be. He's not that player from his record, but to make the Oilers, that's what they need. Now that was Brandon Sutter, at one point in his career. That was the kind of role he was vying for, and he didn't do a bad job of it for a while. But he's 34 now, and players lose a lot, and marginal players don't have a lot to lose. So, and Gagner's coming off some hip surgery. So anyway, I actually don't think, like, Kurt listed the 5 players. I'm thinking Lavoie might make it on the wing, or
Yeah.
Bourgault might make it on the
Yeah.
wing, and they
Yeah.
might put Ryan or Holloway there as the fourth line
That's
center.
a 4C, or they may just go with 3 centers, 8 wingers, and 7 defensemen on many nights.
Indeed, Bruce. That's as likely as
And
anything.
then you've got McDavid and Draisaitl and McLeod as your 4C, and you're probably pretty good shape.
Yeah. Sounds like a plan. The defense don't
Worked
like it 'cause
successfully in the past, and I
Yeah.
mean, not that Jay Woodcroft is quite comfortable going there.
And again, there's going to be injuries, so likely. And we'll see how that all shakes out. So it's good that there's a number of players who are on the cusp, even on the wing, right? Like Bourgault would be a bit of a stretch to make the NHL this year, but Raphael Lavoie isn't. If he's progressing normally and he's going to be an NHL player, this is the year. He's got to figure out a way. I don't know what his affirmation should be, but being me, it's going to, and if these are bottom line players, I'm going to be a conscientious defensive hockey player first and foremost, and add some physical play. And when I get the puck and have a chance to take it to the net, I'm going to bury it. So that's maybe what Raphael Lavoie should be thinking. But he could easily make the team, and Tyler Tullio could suddenly come out of nowhere and make the team. There's some players who aren't that have had okay success in the AHL, and but probably need more time down there. I do think they just do maybe seem still one forward short of what they need in terms of competition for that last forward spot. I like Max Comtois as a player. Like he always struck me as a big physical winger, nasty, who could kind of like Lavoie or that kind of player. So he's still a free agent, I understand, but I don't know what's going on there.
Well, none of us knows what's going on with that Hockey Canada 2018 investigation, of which he was on that team, and the fact that nobody's signing him, and there's whispers of the league being about to take action.
Could be related.
You don't want to draw conclusions, but
it
definitely could be related, and there could be all the teams sort of saying, well, let's wait and see until that comes out before we want to go there. So
the case, but and we don't.
No, we don't know. But I mean, there's that specter hanging over everybody on that team, unfortunately, until they finally, if they ever do, come out with their findings on it. That entire World Junior team is under a bit of a cloud, but there's a few names that pop up over and over again, and there's you kind of you wonder when the other shoe's going to drop. And I can understand why teams would be reluctant at this point when it sounds like the NHL is close to making some kind of a pronouncement.
With Comtois, it could also be that he had one really good year in Anaheim, 33 points in 55 games, and then he just regressed the last 2 years. He just hasn't. And who knows what's going on.
Happens a lot in Anaheim, it seems like.
Good.
Who's coach there again?
I don't know what to think of Dallas Eakins after all these years. I wonder if he'll get another chance in the NHL. He certainly came across as someone who was sure of himself when he was on Hockey Night in Canada. But I guess you don't get to be an NHL coach if you're not sure of yourself. But Woodcroft doesn't come across that way. It's not like he doesn't come across as lacking confidence or he's not sure of himself. But Eakins seems to have a certain amount of drill sergeant or not drill sergeant, but I'm the first star general of the NHL, and we'll do it my way. Anyway, Bruce, what's next with the Oilers? What's coming up next in terms of?
Well, I'm going captain skates. The rookie camp is coming up. They're going to be playing games this weekend in Penticton. Friday, Saturday, and Monday. They play the Jets, the Flames, and then finally the Canucks. I think they do the same schedule every year at that tournament. And the Oilers and Canucks is the big wrap-up game on the Monday. And Oilers and Flames is sort of the late game on Saturday night, the Battle of Alberta. And so they play 3 games in 4 days. And as best I understand it, that group will actually meet up out there because they can't even technically begin training camp before September 15th. So it begins right on that day. And so they will get through that, and then the Oilers will, pick several guys from that team to invite to main camp. And I think the main camp this year will be pretty streamlined, David. I mean, they got guys that are, there'll be numbers because they got guys signed to minor league contracts, and they all start with the NHL team, and then they get split up. But I think we'll find that splitting happens pretty quick. And the only thing that'll slow it down is they're playing 8 preseason games in 13 days. So you don't want to have a 26-man roster before you're playing those games, right? This is why this is where guys like Sam Gagner and Brandon Sutter and
Lane Peterson,
Hamblin. Yeah, they're going to give them games,
Olivier
and
Rodrigue.
they're going to, they're going to give them a look, and we're going to see. Especially the early games. Last year, McDavid never played, I think, for 3 games, and then he started playing the last 5 games. So there'll be a dividing point, I would suggest, in end of the first week of camp or so, where they ship off a lot of guys, and the PTOs they'll probably keep right till the end, just for those purposes of having enough guys to put on the ice for all these exhibition games, which. Please tell me why we still need 8 preseason games in the National Hockey League. Get to 8 games. I mean, cut it to 6 at least. A lot of people like to see 4.
Cut it to 4.
Yeah, 8's ridiculous. 4. But anyway, that's where we are. So we'll see. We'll go through the motions of some games with, not too many, guys that we recognize like Sutter and Gagner and so on, but not too many sort of core Oilers playing. Through all of those preseason games. So they kind of have a couple of different agendas. They got to get through those games. But I think they got a pretty good idea who's on the team, and they're going to probably fairly streamline that process.
There's only one battle for one job, really. What would you think? Like, listen, they don't want to give up the revenue, Bruce. Nobody does. The players don't, the owners don't. So what they could do is turn 4 of those games into regular season games and have an 85 game regular season, or no, that'd be 86 game regular season. I mean, they could do it that way if they really don't want to give up the revenue, which I don't think they do, or they could just do with 2 fewer games and try to make it up elsewhere. But I don't, follow the money. These decisions are obviously about the money. Because I don't think
at least now they're charging. I mean, you can get a packet of preseason games, and it's like $30 to $60 as opposed to.
Oh yeah.
It's like they used to charge just the same. I mean, way back, they used to just put the same price on all tickets, preseason and regular season. And then for a while they kept it like that, but nobody could sell the preseason games at anything close to that price. And now they've actually lowered the sticker price on preseason games, but there's not enough there of not enough of substance to.
It's a lot of games.
It's a lot of games, and it's a lot of second tier players on both the team you rooting for and whoever they're playing against that night, and it's. I got that as part of the procedure. Just 8 games is too damn much, especially in 13 days.
Remember that one preseason, Bruce, where Ty Ratty, Jesse Puljujarvi, and someone else? Who was the
Tyler
other guy?
Yamamoto. They had 15 goals between them in preseason as right wingers, and then they had 9 goals between them in the regular season, which is a little longer than 8 games. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. All righty, Bruce. Well, I think that does it. So thank you for talking tonight.
Yeah, thanks for listening, everyone. Enjoy your holiday, David, and we'll keep covering the Oilers through camp and then back into post-game podcasts once they start playing real games here.
We don't usually turn up the gas ourselves and do post-game podcasts to the regular season. I don't think we have not. Yeah, I'm away for 2 weeks, and there's a chance that you'll do a podcast in the meantime and in between time with Kurt Levens. We'll see if there's some news. Maybe you'll do that. So,
And there's every chance we'll be writing stories for the Cult of Hockey every day. So
for sure.
Coming. We'll keep that coming for sure.
Thanks, Bruce. Thanks for talking.
Right. Thanks for listening, everyone.
And in the meantime, and in between times, this has been another edition of the Cult of Hockey podcast.